suck that guy's dick?
Fuck, motherfuck, noise. We'll play the game.
If you've been paying attention to some of the random GIFs I use, or you're someone who knows me in real life, you know that I am a huge fan of Kevin Smith's Red Bank, New Jersey universe, aka the View Askew-niverse. While there is something to be said about Kevin Smith's movies past Red State, I wanted to focus on how I feel about the other movies in the Clerks series thus far, and talk about how I felt about Clerks 3 as a fan of Kevin Smith's original work. There is going to be timestamps for each movie, so if you just want to see my review of Clerks 3 as a fan of him, you can do that. Though the video kind of builds up to how I felt about Clerks 3, so I'd advise watching it all the way through. If that interests you, then let's begin.
Hey, try not to suck any dick on the way through the parking lot.
Clerks was Kevin Smith's first movie, and a good tone setter for when Kevin Smith was at his most creative, or I guess at his prime. For those unfamiliar with Clerks, the basic premise is that Dante, the main character, is called in to work on his day off. The place he works at is Quick Stop, a convenience store with its own cast of characters from the customers to the weed dealers who constantly stand in front of the store, Jay and Silent Bob. While at work, Dante constantly laments the fact that he's not even supposed to be here today, and talks to weird customers, his friend from next door, Randall, and his girlfriend Veronica. Throughout the movie, various people explain things to Dante that put his view of himself into question, such as the fact that his girlfriend Veronica was known to have given 37 blowjobs to 37 different men.
37. My girlfriend sucked 37 dicks.
In a row?
And the fact that his ex-girlfriend, who he was thinking about getting back together with, was engaged.
And Caitlin's on the same wavelength?
I think it's safe to say yes.
I think all four of you better sit down and talk it over.
All four?
You, Veronica, Caitlin, and Caitlin's fiancé.
Much like a slice of life anime, Clerks doesn't really have a clear-cut conclusion to its story, nor does it have a real conflict. The main focus of its characters is their relationships and their dialogue, and it should be noted that this is one of the only movies in the 1900s which openly discuss things like Star Wars and comic book. Obviously, now you can get that basically anywhere, but up until then, before, the Marvel Universe and all that stuff,
there was something else going on in Jedi. All those innocent contractors brought in to do the job were killed. Casualties of a war they had nothing to do with.
a lot of people didn't really talk about it unless they were actually into it and weren't just, casuals, basically. While I did watch it when I was a teenager and didn't have much of a frame of reference for how shitty it is to work at a convenience store, and even more so than that, to be called in on your day off, I still felt a connection with Dante. His constant talk of Star Wars and comic books reminded me of a lot of the conversations I had with my friends, except they were about manga and anime. Watching it again in the 2020s is really interesting and really takes me back to a simpler time, when VHSs and rental stores used to exist, and it kind of messes with me that there's a lot of people nowadays that are only a few years younger than me that don't even remember that shit. Aside from Jay and Silent Bob and various other things about the movie, what I love most about it is the fact that this is like the only movie that my girlfriend actually liked, because she herself worked at a gas station around the time we started dating. Clerks 2 has more of a dynamic plot than Clerks 1 did. There's the main plot of Dante working his last day at Movies, since he's planning to marry his current girlfriend and move with her somewhere else. Then there's the subplot of Dante and Becky Scott, his manager, wanting to get together. But because of Dante being with his fiancée Emma, he can't. The introduction of a new character, Elias, a religious younger co-worker who loves Jesus, the Lord of the Rings, and Transformers, allows for many funny interactions between him and Randall, which frees up Dante to develop the subplot between himself and his love interests. Much like how Clerks 1 was about being stuck in your 20s and not going anywhere you wanted to be, Clerks 2 is about opportunities presenting themselves and deciding whether you'd like to pursue passion or stability. I really liked Rosario Dawson. And her chemistry with Dante. They had a real natural way of talking to one another, and it made the idea of them being friends who mutually want something more very believable. I also had a huge crush on Rosario Dawson, and still do, but I think that the movie itself is trying to make you have a crush on Rosario Dawson, but maybe that's just me. I think my favorite scene of all time, and this is kind of the scene that makes you want to makes you in the very least see her as attractive, when she's teaching Dante to dance for his wedding, while ABC from the Jackson 5 plays in the background. The way Rosario Dawson's character looks at Dante and dances with him really demonstrates that she loves Dante, as well as the fact that she's a lot more fun to be around than Dante's fiancé. It really sets up the next scene well.
I love you, Becky.
I'm pregnant, Dante.
Just a quick note for the next part. There's no legal way to stream Clerks 3 as of me doing this video, so I'm just going to be using screen grabs from the previous movies to illustrate some key points. I'll have which movie I'm using in the lower left corner. Clerks 3 starts like the first and second one in some ways, with the introduction of Dante and Randall, Jay and Silent Bob, and Elias from Clerks 2. None of the characters mention it yet, but there's a very important character missing, and it gets addressed after the movie's first turning point. While talking about Star Wars and bullshitting, Randall suddenly starts complaining about him not being able to catch his breath and passes out. This causes Dante to call the police. The ambulance comes, and Randall is informed of the fact that he is having a heart attack, and that they need to get into surgery in order to save him. Being that Randall is the main focus of the movie, he obviously survives. But surviving helps him realize that he really hasn't done anything of worth in his life. He just kind of lived every day just bitching and moaning about all kinds of stuff while not actually doing anything. So basically Randall's going to make Clerks. But where does that leave Dante? For those interested, above this point is heavy spoilers for Clerks 3. If you're a fan of Kevin Smith's movies, at least the Red Bank stuff, I'd say to go watch it. It's also important to note that my conclusion is also based off of a key spoiler for this movie, so please go watch it in order for you to continue. Thank you. After Randall says he wants to shoot the movie that would eventually become Clerks, Dante realizes that Randall wants to talk about both of their lives, while making it seem like it was just Randall's life and Dante was kind of in the background. This obviously upsets Dante, and he goes to see Becky. Dante goes to a cemetery to a headstone that reads Becky Scott Hicks, with the death date of 2007, a few months to a year after the end of the events of Clerks 2. After seeing the ghost of Becky tell him about what the afterlife is like, we get to see some of the dialogue they shared in Clerks 2. We start to see how much Dante was affected by her loss, and he tells her, or her ghost rather, that since the day she's passed away, he hasn't been able to move on, and he died that day. The rest of the movie continues with Randall directing the movie and Dante acting as a producer, securing money, and getting things done to make the movie happen. There are many callbacks to all the things that Kevin Smith has said throughout various podcasts he has done regarding the making of Clerks. While Randall finishes shooting his last scene, Dante shows up to the convenience store drunk and begins berating Randall for him constantly using his heart attack to guilt trip him into helping him make the movie. The two argue for a bit and then Dante collapses from a heart attack. Randall eventually goes to go talk with Dante at his hospital bed and shows him the finished product of what will become Clerks. He prefaces it by saying that Dante is the star, just the way he was in Randall's life. And unfortunately, the next scene is Dante's funeral, where Randall ends his speech by saying, "You're not even supposed to be here today," while looking at Dante's coffin. I first checked out Kevin Smith's work whenever I was in high school. I started with Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and that movie coupled with Mallrats were the movies that I'd show to my friends, and we would constantly reference them, and I think that it brought a lot of joy to our lives. But maybe that's just me. I really hope I didn't annoy them with my Kevin Smith obsession for a bit. These movies brought me comfort when I first moved into my dorm, and I was getting my bearings after being away from my parents for the first time. They brought me comfort when I moved to a new city to work a job that I ended up fucking hating. And they brought me comfort whenever it is that people I loved passed away. Seeing the conclusion of a character that started the series of movies I've been obsessed with and that would comfort me when I needed a distraction hit me harder than it probably should have. But I will say this. This movie is for those who are fans of Kevin Smith's work, and not anyone else really. I don't recommend watching this movie if you're not a fan of Kevin Smith's work, or in the very least a fan of the original Clerks. Clerks 3 ends on a very tragic note, but it feels fitting. I think that Kevin wanted to let us know that this is as far as he's going to take probably the Red Bank universe, or in the very least the Clerks series. And with that, we learn he also acknowledges that the version of himself that Dante represented is dead. He's lived as Kevin Smith, the director who, lives in LA and stuff like that for so long that he can't even remember what it was like to work at, a convenience store anymore. But all the same, a fan favorite character died in Clerks 3. And being that my birthday passed not too long ago and I was feeling a little bit introspective, I wanted to talk about the Askew-universe, and I wanted to talk about things that I enjoyed about this series, because I kind of feel like this is going to be the last time we see anything from the Askew-universe for a while. Thank you for listening to me ramble.